Okay, page 7 of 4.3 Egyptian Innovations and Contributions. We have already found where the answers to coal and questions 1 through 5 are. We are still looking for stylus, cubit, cultural diffusion, as well as answers to 6, 7, 8, and 9. We're looking for, in Egyptian society, who knew how to read or write and why. Page 7, the invention of paper. How did the Egyptians preserve their written records? At first, Egyptians painted or carved hieroglyphics onto stone or clay. While that meant information was permanently recorded, it was not exactly portable. To solve this problem, the Egyptians learned how to make a kind of paper from papyrus, a reed that grows in the Nile River. They also developed ink and a type of pen called a stylus. These were used by scribes or official government recorders to write on papyrus. For the first time, information could be permanently written, transported, and stored. So we have stylus here, and that will help us define stylus there by reading here. Stylus is on page 7. Having permanent and easily transportable writing was an important development in the Egyptian society, especially in the areas of government and commerce. For the first time, people could keep historical records and record and distribute laws and regulations. Merchants could keep a record of their inventories and record the important details of all of their sales and transactions. Because Egyptians used writing only for important matters such as recording business transactions, writing treaties, setting taxes, and documenting important events, only the scribes and a few members of the royal family and upper classes knew how to read or write. The upper classes did not want the ordinary Egyptian workers, citizens, and enslaved people to have this ability. So the question we're looking for is, in Egyptian society, who knew how to read and write and why? We have that question, we have that answer right in this paragraph on page 7. Now we're looking for, what is the Rosetta Stone? What is its importance? For centuries, archaeologists struggled to understand hieroglyphics. In 1799, French soldiers found a large rock near the city of Rashid, which was also known as Rosetta. It was inscribed with one message written in 3 different scripts. One form of the message was written in hieroglyphics, one was written in Demotic script, another form of Egyptian writing, and one was written in Greek. Scholars realized the message was the same in all 3 scripts and were finally able to decipher the hieroglyphics by using the Greek translation. The rock, called the Rosetta Stone, is on display at the British Museum in London. So we were looking for what is the Rosetta Stone and what was its importance. We have that answer right here on page 7 throughout all of this. And why it was important is also through here. Page 7. The development of written language and the creation of papyrus enabled Egyptians to make consistent communications among themselves as well as with their neighbors. It also ensured their beliefs, ideas, and knowledge could be passed down to future generations and civilizations. Much of what we know about ancient Egyptians today comes from their written records. So we are looking for, what did the Egyptians know about mathematics? And still looking to define cubit and cultural diffusion. Mathematics. Page 8. What did the Egyptians know about mathematics? In addition to a system of writing, Egyptians also created numerals and had an understanding of mathematical concepts. The Egyptian numeric system was similar to that used by the Romans. Individual symbols were used for 1, 10, 100, and so on. Numbers were created by repeating the number of the symbols for each place value. For example, Egyptians wrote 21 by writing the symbol for 10 twice and the symbol for 1 once. We can see that over here. For number 10, for 20, they write the same symbol for 10. They write it twice. 11, they show 10 and 1. 12, they show Well, 15, they show 10 and 5. So what did they know about math? We can find that on page 8. The Egyptians also understood mathematical concepts and operations. That also goes with this answer. Documents show examples of addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division problems. Egyptians also could solve more complex problems using fractions and basic concepts of geometry. The Egyptian system of mathematics was centered on common problems they faced and was mostly used in surveying farmland and the construction of buildings. Although their understanding of math was not advanced, it served as the basis for work done by later civilizations such as the Greeks. On to page 9, we are looking to answer, why was it important for Egyptians to develop a standard system of assuming this is weights and measures? And we are also still looking for cubit and cultural diffusion. The Egyptians did not use coins and money to conduct business. They bartered or traded goods. If you are trading 2 fish for a loaf of bread, it is easy to keep track of what you are trading. But how would you know if one pile of wheat is the same as another? A standard set of weights is important when you are trading goods. Merchants agreed on how valuable something was based on its weight. Egyptians used rings, called debins, to weigh goods on a balance scale. Every debin weighed the same amount, about 12 grams. So a debin in one market weighed the same as a debin in another market. They also agreed on standard size of a container. Jars and chests of the same size were used to measure out grain, honey, and gold dust. So we were looking for why was it important that for Egyptians to develop a standard system of weights and measures? We have that right through here. Travelers and farmers needed a way to measure distance. Because the Nile River flooded every year, farmers needed a way to determine where their fields had been before the flooding. The Egyptians measured distances and lengths by cubits. 1 cubit was the length of a person's arm from his elbow to the tips of his fingers. So that should help you find cubit, page 9. Same page that we found system of weights and measures. It was not completely accurate as everyone's arms are different. The architects building the pyramids used rods that were all the same length to make sure no variations affected the construction. They also measured with long lengths of rope that featured evenly spaced knots tied a cubit apart from one another. By standardizing weights and measures, Egyptians ensured that trading could be practiced fairly across Egypt and throughout the region. As Egyptians traveled to other lands to trade, they extended their influence over those cultures. On to page 10, we are looking only for cultural diffusion. Trade networks. How did Egyptian innovation spread throughout the world? Ancient Egyptian merchants used trade networks to ship their goods throughout the ancient world. They would export goods they wanted to sell and import goods they needed from other nations. Egyptian caravans crossed deserts to cities in the modern-day countries of Libya, Afghanistan, and Iran. Egyptians also traveled across the sea to trade. Egyptians used cedar planks they received in trades with other civilizations to build ships that could safely cross the Mediterranean Sea. The pieces of cedar wood were tied together with reeds and then covered with pitch. Egyptian ships had both oars, as many as 20 a side on larger ships, and sails, so oars and sails, to help them navigate the vast open waters. These merchant ships visited Crete, Greece, and Lebanon. Some of the cities the Egyptian merchants visited connected with other trade routes that went to India and Asia. At first, trading occurred mainly between rulers. The pharaoh sent gifts of grain, pottery, dried fish, linen, and gold to rulers they wanted to impress or put in their debt. In return, those rulers sent gifts of payment of wood, livestock, and gems that were not found in Egypt. The pharaoh Hatshepsut was one of the few women to rule Egypt, led a trading expedition to the distant land of Punt in modern-day Ethiopia and Djibouti. As they traded, Egyptians brought their innovations to other civilizations. Merchants used the standard weights and measurements of Egypt to ensure fair trading. They also recorded their trades on papyrus using their system of writing. Many of these innovations were adopted by other civilizations and then adapted to fit their own needs. This mixing of cultures is called cultural diffusions. So that right there, and of course, you can click here for more information on cultural diffusion. Page 10. Conquest also played a role in Egyptian influence. Egypt engaged in many wars. It had a strong, well-trained, and well-equipped army and conquered its immediate neighbors. Egyptian administrators controlled the government and economy of the conquered lands. Rulers had to promise to obey Egyptian laws. Their sons were sent to Egypt as hostages to make sure these rulers obeyed. The sons were educated at the Egyptian court and returned to help run their homelands in the Egyptian way. With its innovations in art, architecture, trading, and technology, the legacy of ancient Egypt extends to today. So we have found everything that we need on these pages. Have fun.